At the wedding, Adrian's secretary replaced our photos with ones of them together. I became the laughingstock of the entire crowd. But Adrian defended her, she was just joking. I had already given him 3 chances, and this was the last one. I smiled and said, "All right, then no wedding." Adrian and I had known each other since middle school, 13 years now. In the 7th year of our relationship, he finally proposed. It was a romantic night, fireworks blossomed in the sky, beautiful enough to leave anyone in awe. Adrian knelt on one knee, the fireworks casting a soft glow on his handsome face. "Catherine, can I be your family?" I was overwhelmed with emotion and couldn't stop crying. I had waited 7 whole years for those words. Because of this, I cared deeply about the wedding a month later. I took half a month off from work to plan and personally oversee every detail, creating the wedding of my dreams. However, on the day of the wedding, the big screen didn't show the video I had spent 3 nights editing. Instead, it was filled with photo after photo of him and his secretary, Evelyn. Skiing on snowy mountains, surfing on the ocean, bungee jumping off cliffs. Together, they conquered one extreme sport after another. Who wouldn't say they were a perfect match? I had no family, and few friends, so most of the guests were Adrian's relatives and friends. Someone was the first to ask, "What's going on? That woman doesn't seem like the bride, does she?" That one sentence was like a stone thrown into a pond, causing a huge ripple of discussion. Their curious, gossipy, and mocking eyes all turned to me. I stood there in my wedding dress, dazed in front of the screen, searching for Adrian. He was standing with Evelyn, looking surprised. When his eyes met mine, he instinctively moved to shield her. I froze. In that moment, something inside me silently began to rot. Adrian and I met in the 2nd year of middle school. Given his family's status, he shouldn't have transferred to an ordinary middle school in a small, backward town. After we became friends, he told me it was because he'd gotten into fights and had been sent to the town to be looked after by his grandmother, who refused to move to the city. He listened to his grandmother the most. Before Adrian transferred, I didn't have any friends. My only task was to take care of my younger brother. In the 1st year of middle school, I made plans with some new classmates to hang out on a Saturday. My mom saw us in town and flew into a rage, rushing over to hit me. She yelled that my classmates were taking me out to play every day and leading me astray, that I should be staying home to take care of my brother. My classmates were scared to tears. The next day, word of the incident spread, and no one wanted to be friends with me anymore. I sat alone in the corner of the classroom, like a moldy spot growing in the corner of the wall, something everyone avoided in fear of bad luck rubbing off. Only Adrian threw his backpack on my desk with a careless swagger and said, "I'm sitting here from now on." "Desk mate, nice to meet you." Adrian wasn't afraid of anything. He always had this air about him, like he could hold up the sky if it fell. Before the final exams, I was downcast. I knew these were my last days at school. My parents had already decided that after I graduated, I would go work at a factory a family friend owned, so I could earn money for my brother to buy a house and get married. Adrian thought I was just stressed about the exams and kept finding ways to cheer me up. "Come on, you're the top student in our grade. You're guaranteed to get into the best school in the city, what's there to worry about?" One day, I couldn't hold it in any longer and broke down in tears, telling him I couldn't keep studying. Adrian was silent for a long time, then patted my head with a bright smile and said, "As long as I'm here, I'll make sure you get to keep studying." He asked his dad for help, promising to study hard in high school in exchange for my chance to keep going to school. The price was 500,000 yuan to my parents. When I received my acceptance letter from the top school in the city, I solemnly told him, "No matter what you do in the future, I'll always forgive you." Adrian brushed it off. "What nonsense. I treat you so well." He went back to the city for high school, attending an international school next to mine. He'd come to see me all the time. His friends often teased us. I would blush and lower my head, too flustered to know what to say. One time, when he was walking me back to my dorm, he suddenly asked, "What do you think about what they say?" I was confused for a moment. "What do you mean?" He suddenly got flustered, scratching his head like a monkey. "I treat you so well, what do you think I mean?" I muttered softly, I'm only good to you too. What? I didn't know how to react, so I quickly walked ahead. We'll talk about it after graduation. Adrian caught up with a silly smile on his face, walking lightly as he said, You said it. Don't be nice to anyone else. After the college entrance exams, we naturally started dating. Even when he studied abroad, he'd fly back to visit me whenever he could. Over 4 years, he collected a thick stack of plane tickets. My roommates said we made them believe in love. After graduation, Adrian returned to the country, and we started living like an ordinary couple. For 3 years, I was immersed in happiness and sweetness, until Evelyn appeared. Evelyn was Adrian's new secretary. The first time I heard about her was one night when Adrian came home after a business dinner. He'd had a bit too much to drink, leaning on her for support. Evelyn was very beautiful, with a doll-like face, big eyes, and a sweet, likable look. She greeted me cheerfully, Hi Miss Catherine, Mr. Adrian had a few drinks, so I brought him home. Adrian hadn't drunk this much in a long time. I felt a pang of distress and reached out to help him. Adrian, eyes closed, pushed my hand away. I froze, staring at my empty hand. Evelyn whispered in his ear, Mr. Adrian, you're home. Only then did Adrian lazily open his eyes, falling into my arms and mumbling, Baby. The strange feeling that had risen inside me faded away. I thanked Evelyn, Thank you for bringing him home. It's my duty as Mr. Adrian's secretary, Evelyn said shyly. I just started, and the previous secretary left too quickly. I haven't gotten used to all of Mr. Adrian's habits yet. Could I have your contact information? I might need to ask you about things in the future. Please? She put her hands together, looking so sincere that I couldn't refuse. I nodded and exchanged contact information with her. After helping Adrian clean up and change into his pajamas, I made some porridge the next morning. When he woke up, he hugged me from behind, sighing, You're the best, baby. I blushed, gently pushing him away, and asked about the night before. Why did you drink so much? Adrian sat down, casually saying, Evelyn can't handle alcohol, so I took a few drinks for her. My hand paused while ladling the porridge, and a thought crossed my mind. If she couldn't drink, why bring her to the dinner? In the end, I didn't ask. I'd never meddled in his work, and I trusted him. I didn't want to question him over some fleeting jealousy. Evelyn contacted me a few times after that, asking things like how much sugar Adrian liked in his coffee or if there were any foods he couldn't eat. Her questions were completely normal, which made me feel guilty for having doubted her, so I answered everything patiently. Until something happened on my birthday that made me realize Adrian's unusual attitude toward Evelyn. That evening, he came home early. When I was blowing out my candles, he sat across from me, looking a bit distracted, occasionally glancing at his phone. After I made my wish, he was frowning, staring at his phone as if facing some urgent crisis. I couldn't help asking, Adrian, what's wrong? Squeak. Adrian suddenly stood up, his chair scraping loudly across the floor as he grabbed his jacket and rushed out. Catherine, there's something going on at work. I need to check it out. It had to be serious if he was in such a hurry. My heart tightened, and I grabbed his sleeve, worried. What happened? Do you want me to come with you? No. He pushed my hand away without looking back. Even when the door slammed shut, he didn't glance at me once. After he left, I sat in the living room, worried about disturbing him, and only sent a few messages asking if he'd resolved things. The delicate cake slowly melted, and the clock ticked towards 11. He didn't reply to any of my messages. Was he really that busy? I wanted to ask what happened at Evelyn's company, but I accidentally clicked into her Instagram. At 9 p.m., she posted, What bad luck. I totally wiped out while skiing. Attached was a photo of her lying in a hospital bed with a cast. 9 p.m., the same time Adrian hurried out. My heart suddenly skipped a beat, and my chest felt hollow. It was as if something bad was about to happen. Just then, her Instagram updated. The photo showed the edge of a man's jacket, black suit, high-quality fabric, and a slender wrist resting on the bedside, wearing a black watch. It matched the one on my hand. In her post, she complained, I told him he didn't need to stay, but he refused to leave. That stubbornness hasn't changed, even after returning from abroad. It felt like I had been hit on the head. There was a bit of pain, and I was at a loss. Did they know each other from abroad? Why didn't Adrian tell me anything? I wanted to ask Evelyn, but I accidentally liked her post. She immediately sent me a message. I'm so sorry, Catherine, I just realized tonight is your birthday. Are you okay being alone? Don't worry, I'll push Mr. Adrian to go back home right away. A few minutes later, she sent another message. Catherine, he won't leave. Adrian didn't come back until the next morning. I had sat in the living room all night. When he opened the door, he was startled. Why are you sitting here? I looked up, my eyes bloodshot. Where were you last night? Adrian walked over and squatted in front of me. Didn't I tell you? Something came up at the company, so of course, I went there. I whispered, I saw Evelyn's Instagram. His brow twitched, and his calm expression slowly crumbled. A second later, he sighed, raised his hands in surrender, and tried to brush it off with a playful tone. I'm sorry, honey, I lied. Evelyn and I were college classmates. She helped me out when I was abroad, and now that her family's all overseas, she broke her leg last night and had no one to take care of her. I figured I should go check on her. Then why didn't you tell me? He forced a smile. I didn't want you to overthink. He knew. He knew I'd overthink because he hid everything from me. Did you hire her as your assistant because of her skills or your college connection? Of course, because of her skills. I swear I had no personal motives. You've got to believe me. He didn't realize his lips twitched unconsciously when he said that. I knew him too well. I was all too familiar with his guilty little gestures. Adrian had promised me 3 times, as long as I'm here. I gave him 3 chances. No matter what he did, I was willing to forgive him. So I chose to ignore his guilt, pretend to be blind, and hugged him tightly, feeling wronged. Last night was my birthday. You promised to spend it with me every year. Don't ever leave me again. Adrian's face relaxed into a smile. Yes, ma'am. Yet, he didn't keep his word. Half a month later, he left me again. We currently live in the downtown apartment he bought, close to our company. When he first returned, he was insistent on driving me to and from work a few times. But soon, neither of us could stand it. The traffic was unbearable. I much preferred my electric scooter, 15 minutes straight to the office. After what happened on my birthday, perhaps out of guilt, he eagerly offered to pick me up from work. I didn't refuse. We were both tiptoeing around that invisible gap between us, trying to patch it up. He lasted half a month. One afternoon, he told me he had a work dinner that night and couldn't pick me up. When I got that message, I actually felt relieved. Even if it rained, and I had to wear a raincoat to ride, it was better than sitting in the cramped car in a suffocating silence. His attempts to make it up to me made me uncomfortable. You only get apologies when someone wrongs you. I didn't want to be constantly reminded that he had once chosen someone else over me. That day, after work, my boss suddenly called out to me. He had been transferred here about a month ago. Compared to my previous boss, who was funny and approachable, he was much more reserved and calm. We secretly counted once, he smiled less than 10 times in a month. The day he smiled the most was when the operations team switched afternoon tea from coffee to milk tea. Our company didn't have an overtime culture, so I was worried he might bring bad habits from his old company. But to my surprise, he said, "Is your boyfriend the one picking you up these days?" I didn't like discussing personal matters with colleagues, let alone my boss. So, I politely responded, that shouldn't have any effect on my work. Marcus nodded, then casually turned his phone around, showing me a picture. It doesn't. But as it happens, I'm Adrian's senior, and we've gone skiing together. The picture flashed before my eyes, and I instantly saw the couple in it, looking intimately close. They were wearing matching ski outfits. Adrian had Evelyn in his arms, smiling with that bright, youthful energy he always had. No matter how you looked at it, they seemed like a sweet couple. So, what does that make me? A joke? A wave of overwhelming sadness crashed over me, making it hard to breathe. I gripped the photo tightly, my body trembling. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sky pressed down dark and heavy. It felt like it was bending my back. So, behind my back, they had been that close. It made my recent efforts to deceive myself, to turn a blind eye, seem utterly ridiculous. Marcus looked at me with a hint of pity. They were quite close in their second year of university. I always heard Adrian had a girlfriend back in China. I didn't expect it to be you. My voice was hoarse. Why are you telling me this? He could have easily pretended not to know. I've seen people who know their friends are cheating but stay silent, forming an unspoken guy code. Why shouldn't I say something? His dark eyes behind his glasses flashed with confusion. I warned Adrian that what he's doing is wrong. Seeing me stay quiet, he looked slightly regretful, furrowing his brow. Should I not have told you? No, I appreciate it. Can you send me the photo? With a flick of his fingers, he sent it to me, then added without looking up, don't let this affect your work. As I waited for Adrian to come home, I thought back over the 4 years of college. Were there signs that he had divided his attention? The answer was yes, but I had never thought of it that way. I had trusted him with all my heart. When he first went abroad, he called me between every class, no matter how trivial the news. He could turn the smallest thing into a half-hour conversation. But somewhere along the line, our talks grew shorter and shorter. When he came back to visit me, we would sit in silence, struggling to find something to talk about for even an hour. At the time, I was anxious. I reflected on whether our lives had diverged so much that we had lost common ground. Could we still go on like this? I voiced my worries, and Adrian reassured me that being able to sit quietly with me was the greatest happiness. But sometimes, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I would catch him smiling at his phone. There was even one time when there was a shooting at his school. I saw the news notification while heading to my early class, and it scared me so much that I snuck out to call him in the hallway. It was around 9 p.m. over there, but Adrian didn't answer. Had something happened to him? I terrified myself with imaginary scenarios, curled up in a corner, crying, and calling him again and again. Meanwhile, I was looking up how to quickly apply for a visa. An hour later, he finally picked up, his voice hoarse, saying he had fallen asleep. He hadn't been in any danger and didn't want to worry me, so he didn't mention it. After we hung up, I felt a deep sense of loss. At first, he would call me and ramble for half an hour about getting oil splattered on his hands while cooking. Since when did I stop being the person he shared everything with? I didn't even think about whether the sound of water in the background meant anything. Adrian pushed the door open in the middle of the night. Our eyes met, and he seemed to sense something, instinctively trying to back away. The gesture stung my eyes. He knew how odd that was and pressed his lips together, pretending nothing was wrong. Why are you still up so late? Who did you take out for drinks today? Adrian replied indignantly, you're overthinking again. Am I overthinking, or are you feeling guilty? I placed the printed photo on the table. He raised an eyebrow and snatched the photo. How did you get this? I wanted to laugh, but couldn't, and awkwardly asked, does it matter? His first reaction was to question me, not to explain. Adrian rubbed his nose. It's just a group photo, why are you making it such a big deal? If I had taken a picture like this with a guy in college. He didn't even let me finish, frowning and interrupting harshly, that's impossible. His chest rose and fell sharply. Just saying it made him so angry. Double standards at their peak. If you care so much about me doing that, why did you? Or were you dating her at the time? Adrian, flustered, shouted, it's just a photo. Is it really that important? There was a shooting the day before, we were under a lot of pressure. She comforted me, and even dragged me skiing. There were many people in the photo, I was just squeezed in next to her. You could have told me if you were feeling pressured. He countered without hesitation, what good would that do? You're always busy, busy with your studies, busy with work, busy making that little money. Where do I rank in your heart? Would you even care if I told you? I looked at him in shock, unable to believe he would say such a thing. I thought he understood I was working hard for our future together. I'm not him, I have no backup plan. I can't afford to stop moving forward for even a moment. I'm always the first to arrive at the library and the last to leave, filling all my spare time with part-time jobs. I want to repay the 500,000 his dad gave my parents and stand beside him with my head held high. Last year, when I solemnly handed him the 500,000, he accepted it. I thought he understood I was rebuilding my self-esteem. Seeing my tears, Adrian froze, his expression filled with deep regret. I'm sorry. I pushed his outstretched hand away. My heart felt like it was being squeezed tightly, making it hard for me to breathe. As the atmosphere in the living room nearly froze, Adrian's phone rang. He hesitated, glancing at me before pulling away to answer. I heard Evelyn's voice on the phone. My leg hurts. Adrian's back stiffened for a moment. I heard him respond, I'll be right there. He can't leave. Clutching my chest, I weakly said, Adrian, I'm not feeling well. If he looked back at me, he'd see how pale my face was. But he didn't. He didn't even grab an umbrella, slamming the door behind him. We both need to calm down. As soon as the door closed, I collapsed to the ground. My vision blurred, and I felt death closing in, an intense sense of crisis rising within me. I can't die. I fought so hard to escape the mire of my family, with a shiny degree and a job I love. I can't die here. I crawled to grab my phone and dialed emergency services, stuttering out the address. After confirming, tears streamed down my face as I lay on the ground, calling Adrian. Please pick up. Didn't you say you wouldn't leave me? I'm scared to be alone in the hospital. Call after call, he didn't answer. I finally gave up. In my senior year, I fainted during the flag-raising ceremony due to long-term malnutrition and academic pressure. When my mom came to the hospital, her first words were to scold me. The laundry at home hasn't been done in days, stop pretending to be sick and slacking off. When she heard about the medical fees, she sneaked out while the doctor wasn't looking. Adrian covered all my medical expenses. He scolded me while placing the test papers he had brought on my hospital bed. With me here, you don't have to worry about anything. Don't blame me for being harsh, your parents are really terrible. Making me bring these papers when you're sick is just too much. Eat up, my housekeeper made this chicken soup, it's really nourishing. If you don't finish it, you'll see my temper. He brought me 3 meals a day, turning the hospital into a home, running here every day. By the time I was discharged, I had gained 5 pounds compared to when I was admitted. Adrian was pleased and pinched my cheeks. You didn't let me down with my all-nighter pig-raising method. I bowed gratefully. Adrian, if you're ever in the hospital, I'll bring you food every day. He scoffed, don't jinx me. I appreciated Adrian's care and knew his dad wanted him to apply to universities abroad, but he was procrastinating and wouldn't prepare. So, I made time to study with him. In March, we took the exam together. I scored 8, he scored 7, exceeding the goal set by his dad. He spun me around excitedly, you're really my lucky star, college genius. I was startled by the sudden hug and clung to him tightly. Adrian blushed and trembled as he hugged me back. We held each other under the tree for 5 minutes, not saying a word, and it didn't feel unbearable. The good memories flooded back. Tears of warmth streamed from my eyes, and a cool touch wiped them away. I opened my eyes, realizing I was already in the hospital. Adrian's eyes were red. I'm sorry, Catherine. I didn't know you were really unwell. I stared blankly. I said I wasn't feeling well. Tears immediately streamed down his face as he kept saying, I'm sorry. After learning from the hospital that my fainting was due to emotional fluctuations, Adrian took care of me for a week, even moving his work to my hospital room. I neither welcomed nor rejected his presence, completely ignoring him. He seemed unaware, enthusiastically sticking around. Even the nurse quietly told me, your boyfriend is really good to you. The day before my discharge, Adrian sat on the sofa, suddenly pushing away a mountain of documents in frustration. So annoying, I don't want to work. In that moment, I recalled the boy who tossed aside his papers and whined to me, Catherine, I don't want to do homework. My heart stirred, and before I realized it, I called his name, Adrian. Adrian rushed to my bedside. You spoke to me. He hugged me, constantly apologizing. I'm such an idiot. I shouldn't have hidden this from you. Evelyn and I are just friends. I don't like her. I only love you. Don't worry, I'll fire her and ensure we have no contact again. I shouldn't have doubted your love for me. How could I not know you love me the most? Will you forgive me? As he spoke, he broke down in tears. His love for me didn't seem fake. Can someone truly love two people at the same time? When he hugged her so intimately in the photo, did he feel nothing? I let him hold me tightly, whispering in his ear, "This is the second time." What second time? It's nothing, I mean, okay. Adrian cupped my face, his eyes sparkling. Catherine, I only want to be with you. No one is more important than you. The day after my discharge, he proposed to me. I said yes. Strangely, at the moment I received the ring, I felt happiness mixed with curiosity. Was his proposal genuine or just out of guilt and remorse? When Evelyn showed up at the wedding, I understood the answer. It was a guilt that wouldn't last long. I ripped off the veil and walked toward Adrian step by step. What's going on, Adrian? She said she wanted to see our wedding, so I sent her an invitation. Adrian's lips twitched slightly, but he chose to stand between me and Evelyn, blocking my view of her. Don't be angry, Catherine. She's just joking. Can we continue the wedding? How did Evelyn find out about our wedding? It could only mean that Adrian had been secretly in touch with her behind my back. I wasn't upset. What I felt, instead, was relief and a strange sense of liberation. I handed Adrian the veil I had painstakingly chosen after visiting over a dozen bridal shops, smiled, and said, "Go on. I'll leave the stage for you too." A flash of triumph crossed Evelyn's eyes. The next second, she was teary-eyed, as if I had wronged her. "Catherine, Mr. Adrian said he was worried the wedding would be too dull, so I just added some of our old photos to liven up the mood." She pitifully added, "I didn't know you'd get this upset." "Catherine." Adrian's face went pale. "Evelyn isn't the type of person you think she is. Don't joke about something as serious as our wedding." I rolled my eyes at him without mercy. "Use your brain for a second. If I played intimate photos of me with another man at our wedding and said it was just a joke, would you be okay with that? Anyone who'd do something like this is either an idiot or just plain shameless. And you," I seized the moment while they weren't paying attention, lunged past Adrian, and grabbed Evelyn by the hair. "Are both. Do you know how long I've been preparing for this wedding, you wretch?" "Ah." Evelyn's piercing scream filled the room as I slapped her hard across the face. Adrian immediately pulled us apart, shocked. "Catherine, what are you doing?" To everyone who knew me, I had a reputation for being so gentle that it bordered on weakness. I'd never even had a fight with anyone, let alone hit someone. But they'd never tested my limits. My heart is large enough to tolerate many offenses from others. But only those who matter are allowed in. Now, there's one less person. I sneered coldly, "You're trash, too." As they stared at me in disbelief, I walked over to the big screen, took off my engagement ring, and with a smile for everyone present, I said, "Wish me luck. I'm officially single again today because my ex-fiancé slept with his secretary and ruined my wedding. These two are a match made in heaven. Let's give them our blessings." I started clapping. The applause was scattered. It came from my college roommates, their eyes red with emotion. I smiled at them, tossed the ring aside, lifted my dress, and headed for the door. "Catherine." Adrian scrambled to pick up the ring. I didn't look back. Every step I took was firm and resolute. When I got into the taxi, the driver gave me a quick glance through the rearview mirror and handed me a pack of tissues. "Miss, wipe your tears. No man is worth this." Only then did I realize I'd been crying. I wiped my face and said, "These are tears of joy. For years ago, I broke free from the shackles of my dysfunctional family. Today, I left another toxic relationship behind. The process wasn't perfect. But the outcome is exactly what I needed." When Adrian returned, I was packing up the last of my things. Almost everything in the house was bought by Adrian. I was only taking my clothes. He grabbed my suitcase, both confused and angry. "Where are you going? You've had your little outburst at the wedding, and now you want to run away from home?" I looked at him calmly. "Let go." "Where are you going to go?" "That's none of your concern. I've already rented an apartment." His eyes widened. "When?" "The day after my birthday." There wasn't a moment of hesitation. After he left me behind to stay overnight at the hospital with Evelyn, I took the morning off to look at apartments, signed a lease at noon, and went back to work in the afternoon. I didn't tell Adrian. Maybe deep down, I had always known this day would come. Adrian was completely dumbfounded, his face a mix of hurt and confusion. Why? I glanced around the apartment we'd lived in for 3 years. Every corner was familiar. The cozy living room, the spotless kitchen, the soft carpet, all had my heart and effort in them, and all bore witness to our happiness. This place doesn't belong to me. Adrian's face turned ashen. He punched the wall in helpless rage. You're leaving me because of a joke? A joke? When your first instinct was to defend her, you used up your last chance. He didn't understand what I meant. She's always had a playful side, even back when she was studying abroad. She just wanted to lighten the mood. This time, she went a bit too far, I admit. If you don't want to see her again, I'll block her, okay? Desperately, he grabbed his phone and opened Evelyn's chat. I caught a glimpse, they had been messaging right up until the moment Adrian walked in. Realizing this wasn't good, he awkwardly deleted Evelyn, then blocked her in front of me. Holding up his phone like it was some sort of trophy, he said, "Look, I deleted everything." I didn't take the phone. I just shook my head. It's not my problem anymore, Adrian. Maybe you didn't fully grasp what I said at that ridiculous wedding, so let me say it again, we're done. I'm lucky we didn't make it official. That last sentence hit him hard. His eyes reddened, and he clung to my suitcase. Catherine, this is our home. Are you really going to leave me here alone? We made it through 4 years of long-distance dating in college. Didn't we promise to stay together forever? I didn't want to drag this out. I grabbed his hand and forcefully pried it off, accidentally pulling his watch off in the process. The black watch fell to the floor, and parts flew everywhere. Be a decent person, Adrian. Stop reminding me that you and Evelyn have been close for a long time. I've already played the fool once. Do you hate me? I don't hate you. I just don't have any expectations left. I don't know when you'll abandon me again or turn me into the enemy while you protect her. More importantly, even thinking about you doing that in the future doesn't make me sad. I smirked. What do you think that means? He understood. It meant I didn't love him anymore. We were truly over. He let go, eyes filled with pleading. It took me half a day to tidy up my new place. The next morning, I was fresh and ready for work. When I handed a file to Marcus, his eyes lingered on my bare ring finger for a moment before he quietly spoke. There's an opportunity for an overseas assignment next month. Our department has 2 spots. I recommended you. You can think it over. Overseas? I was caught off guard by the sudden news. When did you recommend me? Last week. All right. He even smiled at me, a rare and almost fatherly warmth in his expression. Close the door on your way out. Thanks for your hard work. I closed the door, feeling like I was in a dream. This was the first time Marcus had smiled at me. I thought he'd always be a cold and distant boss. A while ago, when he saw my engagement ring for the first time, he didn't say a word. He just frowned, a look of pity and regret in his eyes, as if he were thinking, what a shame, why would such a smart woman make such a bad choice? Ever since that day, he hadn't smiled at me again. In my newly settled life, Adrian was the only lingering unpleasantness. He called me every day. I blocked every number. When that didn't work, he started sending long, emotional texts. I ignored him for a few days until, finally, he couldn't hold back. He showed up at my office building with a huge bouquet of flowers, waiting for me. Grinning, he reached out as I approached. Catherine, the watch is fixed. That watch was the cheapest thing Adrian owned. I'd scraped together every bit of money from my part-time job as a freshman to buy him the most expensive birthday gift I could afford. He wore it for 7 years. Once, a friend had teased him for wearing such a cheap watch. He had immediately gotten serious, saying, "This is the most precious thing I have." The friend had been too scared to tease him again. But this was the same man who wore that watch while spending the night caring for Evelyn. I wondered if he had ever looked at the time that night and thought about me waiting for him at home. I scoffed, the watch has nothing to do with me anymore. Neither do you. With that, I rode off on my scooter, leaving him behind. Adrian was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Life has always been smooth for him, the few bumps he's hit have all been because of me. I didn't expect him to still be so persistent, even bringing in reinforcements. When I got a message from Evelyn, I laughed in disbelief. Where do they get the nerve? Still, I agreed to meet, just to see what game she was playing. When she saw me, Evelyn put on a pitiful face and said, Adrian asked me to come explain our relationship. Catherine, there's really nothing between us. Adrian only let me into the company because we were classmates, and now I've already resigned. That day at the wedding, I went too far with my jokes, and I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. If you're willing to forgive me, to forgive Adrian, I'll do anything you ask. As she spoke, she started to sob. A beautiful woman in tears, Adrian would definitely be heartbroken seeing this. But me? I wasn't moved. Oh really? You'd do anything? Even kneel? Evelyn froze, and after a long pause, she said with fake righteousness, if it means you'll forgive Adrian, I'll do it. Catherine, enough. Do you really have to be so aggressive? Adrian's voice came from the phone Evelyn had left on the table. When I caught Evelyn's smug look, I realized what was going on, they were playing me. I crossed my arms and said, she said she'd do anything, and I just made a simple request. Why are you getting worked up? If you're not sincere, why bother inviting me out? Evelyn's face twisted with mockery, but her tone was urgent. You two, stop fighting because of me. I'll kneel. I'll kneel. Then she hung up the phone. Evelyn smirked triumphantly. I won. Adrian still can't let me go. I was bewildered. Why would I compete with you for a man I don't even want? All my life, I've competed in studies, hard work, degrees, and resumes. I've never competed for trash. Evelyn's face darkened. You're jealous of me. I chuckled. If Adrian couldn't let you go, why did he make you leave the company? Instead of being upset, she smiled even wider. Adrian didn't tell you? He knows I love fashion design, so he helped me open a studio. My heart sank. No wonder she was smiling. A clown sits in front of me, how could you not laugh? Evelyn's voice was full of condescension. And you didn't actually think we were just friends, did you? Do you know what we were doing the night of the shooting, when you called? Something really fun. I told him not to answer, and he didn't. At the same time, your parents were at your school demanding money and planning to kidnap you, right? You should be thanking me. If it weren't for how happy I made Adrian, he wouldn't have felt guilty enough to rush back to save you after skiing with me. She blinked, her eyes full of fake innocence. Poor thing, your family doesn't love you either. Disgusting. How could anyone be so disgusting? That was in my 3rd year of college. After that, I cut ties with my family. I wanted to be the sunshine of my own spring. Adrian was by my side, encouraging me, supporting me. Now I realize, all that unconditional support was just him trying to cover up his betrayal. I clenched my fists, suppressing the nausea rising in my stomach. You two are revolting. She sneered, and what right do you have to judge us? Adrian was overseas for so long, and he's the one who kept coming back to you. Did you ever go to him? You knew he was stressed, that he faced racial discrimination, that he was robbed. Evelyn's anger flared as if I had committed some unforgivable crime. Whenever he was in trouble, I was the one by his side. What did you do? You didn't even bother to buy a plane ticket. All you did was enjoy his love. I turned to Adrian, who was sitting in the corner, unsure how much he had heard. Is that what you think too, Adrian? Evelyn followed my gaze, her face instantly turning pale. Adrian stumbled over, his body trembling. He wanted to say something but couldn't seem to find the words. I was genuinely confused. Is it true, Adrian? You think I just enjoyed your love, that I never did anything for you? When he couldn't understand his coursework, I stayed up all night watching online lectures, organizing outlines, and helping him piece together his thoughts. When he faced racial discrimination and I wasn't by his side, I spent an entire week of my free time gathering research and writing a guide on how to properly handle racism. When he was stuck on his thesis, I studied technical terms, revised his framework, rewrote his literature review. All the things I did for him, and yet in his mind, I had only enjoyed his love. I looked at him like I was seeing him for the first time, with utter disgust. Adrian, you're vile. You're not worthy. I didn't have a visa. I had never been on a plane. The places he went, I'd only seen in books. When we first started our long-distance relationship, I was full of anxiety. He said, "No distance can fade my love for you. Adrian will always love Catherine." But by the third year of him being abroad, that promise was void. Turns out, promises only hold while love is still there. Once that's gone, promises are worthless. I laughed coldly. You and that cheap woman are a perfect match. Keep it in the family. Why drag me into it? If you just said you don't like long-distance relationships anymore, or that you don't love me, I wouldn't have clung to you. You really overestimate yourself and underestimate me. If you told me you couldn't resist sleeping with this trash, I'd have been gone in a second. I left them behind, not wanting to look back in case I exploded from anger. That night, I told Marcus I agreed to the overseas assignment. 1. It was a great opportunity for growth. 2. Adrian and Evelyn had polluted the air in this city. I needed a break. While I was busy applying for a visa, a friend who had been at the wedding told me that Adrian and Evelyn were at each other's throats. Adrian was demanding Evelyn return the $1 million he'd invested in her studio and was threatening to sue. Evelyn had no money, so she cried, threw fits, and threatened to end it all. Given that her family had sent her to study abroad, I assumed she wasn't struggling financially. My friend clarified the situation. Evelyn's ex-boyfriend had paid for her studies abroad. He was wealthy and didn't care about the money. But just before they were supposed to get married, he found out Evelyn had been secretly seeing Adrian during college. He immediately cut off all financial support, and Evelyn couldn't find a job overseas. So, she turned to Adrian. My friend said Adrian was a fool, tricked by Evelyn. I scoffed. He's not a child. It's a matter of mutual consent. What's the point of playing the innocent boy? I told her, thanks, but I don't care about their business anymore. You don't have to update me. But a few days later, I heard Adrian had sued Evelyn. She couldn't repay the money and became a dishonest debtor. A few days after that, my visa finally came through. Before I left the country, I got a call from one of Adrian's friends. He was frantic. "Catherine, you need to come to the hospital. Adrian's in the ER from alcohol poisoning." He said that after our breakup, Adrian started drinking like it was water. I hung up the phone and told myself, don't believe rumors. Don't spread them. The next day, Adrian called me from a friend's phone, acting as if nothing had happened. "Catherine, I'm in the hospital. Didn't you say you'd bring me food every day? I want your porridge. I love whatever porridge you make. When are you coming? I miss you so much. I thought I'd see you when I opened my eyes." He rambled on, his voice gentle and affectionate. I cut him off. "Stop pretending, Adrian. Outdated promises don't count." There was a long silence on his end before he choked out, "So, you'll never forgive me? You destroyed my belief in love." I sighed. "And besides, I'm leaving." A boarding announcement sounded in the background, urging passengers to check in. Adrian became frantic, his breathing heavy. "Catherine, where are you going?" I said, "This has nothing to do with you." I hung up the phone and removed the SIM card. Boarded the plane. I was embarking on a new chapter of my life. When I first landed, I was busy. Busy adapting to the environment, to the job. After half a month, I got the hang of things, settled into the work rhythm, and reconnected with colleagues back home, often exchanging gossip. One day, she told me, Mr. Marcus got into a fight at lunch. I was shocked. Who? Marcus? In a fight? I couldn't picture it. Every day, he comes to work with his hair perfectly combed, wearing a crisply pressed suit with not a wrinkle in sight. When faced with a tough problem, he'd frown instinctively, then push up those thin, black-rimmed glasses. He looked more like a college professor than a company supervisor. Someone like him, in a fight? The contrast was just too much. My colleague sucked in a breath. With your ex-boyfriend? I was stunned. What? They seemed to know each other. When they were fighting, I heard your ex cursing him, saying he was stealing his girl. The supervisor shouted, "She's out of your league." She paused, her voice full of excitement and gossip. The she he was talking about, was it you? Are you crazy? She mumbled awkwardly, "Yeah, it doesn't seem likely." Haha. That night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning. Did Marcus really fight Adrian because of me? I shivered. It was more likely that Marcus simply hated Adrian. Adrian was so insufferable, after all. I ended up staying at the branch office for 2 years. On the same day, I received a notice to return home and an email congratulating me on my promotion. Back home, I finally had my own office. As I ran my fingers over the leather armchair, I began to form a grand plan: 3 years to become general manager, 5 years to become CEO. Someone knocked on the door, interrupting my moment of ambition. I cleared my throat and said, in a mock-serious tone, "Come in." The new department manager walked in, smiling for a change. "Long time no see. This afternoon's tea is milk tea." In the 6th year after graduation, I bought my own house. As I walked out of the sales office, I saw a tiny kitten with its tail held high, meowing at the top of its little lungs. It looked to be about 2 months old, drenched, its pale yellow fur clinging to its small body. It was so skinny and frail. I felt sorry for it and used some tissues to dry it off. I waited with it for 2 hours. Its mother never came. I reached out my hand and softly asked, "Do you want to come home with me?" And then, a miracle happened. It meowed as it crawled toward me, tail held high, its little voice sharp and thin. It climbed onto my shoes and started playing with my shoelaces. Its tiny head wobbled as it moved. My heart melted. I wrapped it in my jacket, picked it up, and gently touched its tiny nose. "You don't have a mom or dad. And, well, neither do I. From now on, we'll be together." The end.